The night the police came, everything looked perfect from the outside.
No, please.
The mansion lights were glowing. Expensive cars stood quietly in the driveway. Soft music played inside. To anyone watching, it looked like the home of a happy and successful couple. But inside that house, someone was already planning destruction. Daniel Hayes was a self-made billionaire. He was known as a calm man, fair in business, and kind to people who worked for him. Many people respected him because he never forgot where he came from. Years ago, he had been poor himself. His wife, Victoria Hayes, lived a very different life. She loved attention, luxury, and power. To the public, she was the perfect wife, elegant, smiling, always standing beside her husband at events. But behind closed doors, her smile disappeared. She felt trapped in a marriage where she no longer controlled everything. And Victoria hated losing control. For months, she had been secretly meeting someone. A man Daniel trusted. A man who knew Daniel's business secrets. Together, they whispered about money, freedom, and a future without Daniel. But divorce was not enough. Victoria wanted everything. The money, the company, the mansion, and she wanted Daniel gone. 3 weeks before the arrest, strange things started happening. Daniel noticed missing files from his office computer, money transfers he never approved, phone calls from numbers he didn't recognize. At first, he thought it was a business mistake. He had no idea someone inside his own home was building a trap around him. Victoria began acting afraid around him in public. Small things at first, flinching when he raised his voice during normal conversations, telling friends she felt unsafe, leaving small emotional hints that something was wrong. People started watching Daniel differently. No one asked him why. In the same house worked a young maid named Elena. She was quiet, poor, and mostly invisible to the wealthy guests who visited the mansion. She cleaned rooms, served tea, and stayed silent. No one noticed her watching carefully. Elena had taken a job to support her sick mother. She avoided drama and never interfered in family matters. But she noticed things others ignored. Late-night arguments when Daniel was not home. Victoria whispering on the phone, saying, "Soon it will be over." Documents left open on tables. Papers quickly hidden when someone entered the room. And one night, Elena saw something that made her heart race. Victoria placing a small envelope inside Daniel's office drawer. When Elena entered to clean later, the drawer was slightly open. Inside the envelope were documents with Daniel's signature, but something felt wrong. The signature looked copied. Elena closed the drawer quickly. She told herself it was none of her business. Poor people didn't accuse rich people. That only caused trouble. Then came the night everything changed. Police cars arrived without warning. Red and blue lights flashed across the mansion walls. Neighbors watched from outside as officers entered the house. Victoria stood, crying near the staircase. "He threatened me," she said, her voice shaking. "He said if I left him, he would destroy me." Daniel stood frozen, confused. "What are you talking about?" he asked quietly. The police showed him documents, illegal transfers, fraud accusations, and a report claiming domestic abuse. Evidence that made him look dangerous and guilty. Daniel's world collapsed in seconds. Someone had planned this carefully. Every document pointed to him. Every story supported Victoria. Even the media arrived before the police left. By morning, headlines were everywhere. Billionaire arrested in fraud and abuse scandal. The public turned against him instantly. Investors pulled away. Friends stopped calling. His company board removed him within days. And Victoria? She played the role of the broken wife perfectly. Only one person felt something was wrong. Elena. She remembered the envelope, the fake-looking signature, the late-night calls, the fear in Victoria's voice that sounded rehearsed. But who would believe a poor maid against a billionaire's wife? She stayed silent, at least for now, because she didn't know yet that soon a courtroom would become the place where truth and lies would fight, and her voice would be the only thing standing between an innocent man and a lifetime in prison. And somewhere, Victoria smiled, believing her plan was already complete. She had no idea someone invisible had seen too much. Daniel Hayes had never felt silence like this before. The prison cell was small, cold, and smelled of metal and old concrete. Just weeks ago, He had slept in a luxury bedroom overlooking the city. Now, he sat alone on a hard bed, replaying the same question again and again in his mind. How did everything fall apart so fast? He knew he was innocent, but the evidence said otherwise. Bank transfers carried his approval. Documents held his signature. Messages from his phone sounded threatening. Every piece fit together perfectly, too perfectly. Someone had planned this carefully, and that thought scared him more than prison. Outside, the world moved on without him. News channels repeated the story daily. The once respected billionaire was now called greedy, violent, and dangerous. Social media judged him without trial. Former business partners avoided his name completely. Victoria appeared on television once, wearing white, her eyes red from fake tears. "I trusted him," she said softly. "I never thought he could hurt me." People believed her. Why wouldn't they? She looked like the victim. Meanwhile, inside the mansion, life continued as if Daniel had never existed. Victoria walked freely through the halls, already speaking to lawyers about controlling Daniel's company shares. The man she secretly worked with, Marcus, Daniel's former business advisor, visited often now. They spoke openly, laughing, planning their future. Elena noticed everything. She kept her head down while cleaning, pretending not to listen. But her heart beat faster every time she heard their conversations. One afternoon, while dusting the living room, she heard Marcus say quietly, "The court date is soon. Once he's convicted, everything becomes yours." "Victoria's Maid. He trusted me too much," she replied. That was his biggest mistake. Elena froze behind the doorway. Her hands trembled. This was not just suspicion anymore. Something terrible had been done. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. She thought about her mother, her hospital bills, and the risk of losing her job. Rich people had power. Poor people disappeared when they caused problems. But she also remembered Daniel. He had once paid for her mother's medicine when he learned about her situation. He never told anyone. He simply helped and walked away. That memory refused to leave her mind. By morning, Elena made a quiet decision. She would look for proof. The opportunity came sooner than she expected. Victoria and Marcus left the house in a hurry, forgetting to lock Daniel's office. Elena entered slowly, her heart pounding. She knew this could cost her everything. The office still smelled like Daniel's cologne. Papers were scattered across the desk. Most were legal documents, but something caught her attention, a small black flash drive near the computer. She hesitated. Then she picked it up. Inside were recorded phone calls. Elena didn't understand everything, but one voice was clear. Victoria's voice. "Once he signs the transfer papers, we report him. The documents will make it look real." Elena covered her mouth in shock. This was proof. Real proof. But it was also dangerous. If Victoria discovered the flash drive was missing, Elena would be the first suspect. She quickly copied the files on her old phone and returned everything exactly as she found it. Her hands shook for hours afterward. Days later, Daniel finally received a visit from his lawyer. The man looked tired and defeated. "The evidence against you is strong," the lawyer admitted. "Unless something changes, the court may not believe your side." Daniel stared at the table. "Someone set me up," he said quietly. The lawyer sighed. "Then we need proof." But neither of them knew that proof already existed, hidden in the pocket of a maid too afraid to speak. Back at the mansion, Victoria sensed something changing. She began asking questions, watching the staff more closely. Her smiles became sharper, her patience shorter. She could feel something slipping out of her control, and she hated that feeling. Elena noticed a change too. She realized time was running out. If she stayed silent, an innocent man would lose his life forever. But if she spoke, powerful people would come after her. For the first time in her life, Elena understood that truth had a price. And soon, she would have to decide if she was brave enough to pay it. Elena had never felt fear like this before. Every sound inside the mansion made her nervous. Every time Victoria looked at her, Elena felt as if her secret had already been discovered. The copied recordings on her phone felt heavier than gold, because they could save an innocent man or destroy her life completely. For 2 days, she said nothing. She worked quietly, cleaned rooms, served food, and avoided eye contact. But inside her mind, the same thought repeated again and again. If I stay silent, Daniel goes to prison forever. That thought finally pushed her forward. Late one evening, Elena searched online for Daniel's lawyer. It took her hours to find the office number. Her hands shook as she stared at the phone screen. What if they didn't believe her? What if they thought she was lying for money? She almost gave up, but then she remembered Daniel being taken away in handcuffs, confused and alone. She made the call. At first, the assistant refused to connect her. A maid claiming to have evidence sounded ridiculous. But Elena insisted. Her voice trembled, yet she didn't hang up. Finally, the lawyer agreed to meet her, secretly. The meeting happened in a small cafe far from the city center. Elena arrived early, wearing simple clothes, trying not to attract attention. When the lawyer arrived, his expression showed doubt. He expected rumors, not real evidence. That changed when Elena played the recording. Victoria's voice filled the silence between them. Once he signs the transfer papers, we report him. The lawyer's face slowly changed. Shock replaced disbelief. He listened twice, then leaned forward. Do you understand what this means? He asked quietly. Elena nodded. It means he didn't do it. The lawyer exhaled deeply. For the first time in weeks, hope appeared in his eyes. Yes, he said, but this is only the beginning. We need more. The court will ask how these recordings were made, why they exist, and who else is involved. And that was when Elena realized something terrifying. If Victoria discovered this meeting, she wouldn't stop easily. Back at the mansion, tension was growing. Victoria noticed small changes. Staff members avoided her eyes. Marcus warned her that the company audit team had started asking new questions. Some financial records didn't match perfectly anymore. Someone was digging. Victoria's patience began to crack. One night, Elena accidentally overheard another conversation. Marcus sounded worried. If anyone finds out about the fake accounts, we're finished. Victoria's voice turned cold. Then make sure no one talks. Elena felt her blood run cold. This was no longer just about money. These people were desperate, and desperate people were dangerous. Meanwhile, in prison, Daniel was losing hope. Days felt longer. Nights felt endless. He replayed every moment of his marriage, searching for signs he had missed. The betrayal hurt more than the accusations. He had trusted Victoria completely. Now that trust had become a weapon against him. When his lawyer visited again, Daniel expected more bad news. Instead, the lawyer placed a phone on the table. Listen carefully, he said. Victoria's recorded voice filled the room. Daniel froze. For the first time since his arrest, emotion broke through his calm expression. Not anger, not relief, just disbelief. She planned this, he whispered. The lawyer nodded. Yes, and someone very brave brought this to us. Daniel looked up slowly. Who? For now, the lawyer said, someone who wants the truth to win. But the truth was not safe yet. The recordings proved conspiracy, but they didn't explain everything. The fake documents, the financial transfers, the witness statements. Someone inside Daniel's company had helped create the illusion. And that person was still free. Still watching. Still trying to protect Victoria. That same night, Elena returned to her small room in the mansion and found something unusual. Her drawers had been opened. Nothing was missing, but things were not where she left them. Someone had searched her room. Her heart pounded as fear spread through her chest. Victoria was starting to suspect. Elena realized she was no longer invisible. And now, she was in danger too. Across the city, Victoria stood by the window of the mansion, staring into the darkness. Her instincts told her something was wrong. Her perfect plan was beginning to crack. And she had no intention of losing. Because if she went down, she would take everyone with her. Elena did not sleep that night. She sat on the edge of her small bed, staring at the open drawer. Someone had definitely searched her room. The clothes were folded differently. Her old phone charger was moved. Small things, but enough to tell her the truth. She was no longer invisible. And that meant danger had already begun. For the first time since finding the recordings, fear almost made her quit. She thought about leaving the mansion quietly, disappearing before things became worse. No court, no testimony, no risk. But then another thought followed. If she left now, Daniel would lose everything, and Victoria would win. The next morning, the mansion felt different. Victoria's smile was gone. She moved through the house with cold patience, watching everyone carefully. Her questions sounded casual, but her eyes searched for nervous reactions. "Has anyone entered Daniel's office recently?" she asked during breakfast. The staff shook their heads quickly. Elena kept her face calm, her hands steady, even though her heart pounded loudly in her chest. Victoria's gaze stayed on her a second longer than usual. That single moment told Elena everything. Victoria suspected something. Later that day, Daniel's lawyer called Elena from an unknown number. "The court hearing has been moved forward," he said quietly. "Someone is pushing for a faster trial. We believe Victoria wants this finished before new evidence appears." Elena understood immediately. They were running out of time. "We need stronger proof," the lawyer continued. "Something that connects Marcus directly to the financial fraud. Without that, Victoria's lawyer will say the recording was taken out of context." Elena looked around the empty hallway. Marcus visited the mansion often. He used Daniel's office when Victoria was busy. If proof existed, it would be there. But going back into that office now was far more dangerous than before. That evening, opportunity appeared again. Victoria left for a charity event. Marcus arrived shortly after, entering Daniel's office alone. Elena watched from the hallway as the door closed behind him. Minutes passed. Then Marcus left in a hurry, speaking angrily on his phone. In his rush, he forgot to lock the office door. Elena's pulse raced. This might be her only chance. She entered quietly, closing the door behind her. The room felt heavier than before, filled with risk. She moved quickly, searching drawers and folders. Most files were normal business records. Then she noticed a hidden compartment slightly open beneath the desk. Inside was a folder labeled with numbers instead of names. Elena opened it carefully. Bank statements, fake companies, large money transfers, all connected to accounts created after Victoria and Marcus started working together. And, at the bottom, a signed agreement. Marcus's signature. Victoria's signature. A document planning the transfer of Daniel's assets after his conviction. Elena's hand shook. This was everything. The missing piece. Proof of motive. Proof of conspiracy. Proof that Daniel had been betrayed from inside his own home. She quickly took photos with her phone and returned everything exactly as she found it. But as she turned to leave, the office door suddenly opened. Elena froze. Victoria stood in the doorway. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Victoria's eyes slowly moved from Elena's face to the desk, then back again. Her expression was calm, but her voice carried quiet danger. "What are you doing here?" Elena forced herself to stay calm. "Cleaning, Mom." Victoria stepped inside, closing the door behind her. At this hour, the room felt smaller, the silence heavier. Elena lowered her eyes, pretending nervousness. "You said the office should always be clean." Victoria stared at her for several long seconds. Then she smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Yes," she said softly. "I did." She walked closer, her heels echoing against the floor. "You know," Victoria continued, "loyalty is very important in this house." Elena nodded, unable to speak. Victoria stopped just inches away. "And disloyal people," she whispered, "usually regret their choices." Elena felt fear crawl up her spine, but she didn't move. After a long pause, Victoria stepped back and opened the door. "You can go." Elena walked out slowly, resisting the urge to run. Only when she reached her room did she finally breathe again. Victoria knew, maybe not everything, but enough. That night, Elena sent the photos to Daniel's lawyer. The response came almost immediately. "This changes everything. The court must see this." For the first time, victory felt possible. But across the mansion, Victoria stood alone in the dark, holding her phone. Her expression was no longer calm. It was furious. Her perfect plan was collapsing, and she knew exactly who was responsible. And Victoria Hayes had never lost without fighting back. The court date was now only days away. And before the truth could be spoken, someone might try to make sure Elena never reached that courtroom. The days before the court hearing felt longer than ever. Elena moved through the mansion carefully, always feeling watched. Every sound behind her made her turn around. Every phone call made her nervous. Victoria no longer pretended to be kind. Her silence had become cold and threatening. Something was coming. Elena could feel it. 2 nights before the hearing, Elena finished cleaning late. The house was unusually quiet. Victoria had not returned yet, and most of the staff had already gone to sleep. As Elena walked toward her room, the lights in the hallway suddenly turned off. Darkness filled the corridor. Her heart jumped. "Hello," she called softly. No answer. Then she heard footsteps behind her. Fast, heavy. Elena turned just as a shadow moved toward her. A hand grabbed her arm, tried to pull her back. Panic exploded inside her. She struggled, dropping her phone as it slid across the floor. "Stop fighting," a male voice whispered angrily. "Marcus." Elena realized immediately what was happening. They were trying to scare her, or worse. She kicked hard and managed to break free, running toward the kitchen where the emergency lights were brighter. The noise woke another staff member, and Marcus quickly disappeared into the darkness before anyone else arrived. Elena's hands shook uncontrollably. This was no longer a warning. They wanted her silent. Forever. That same night, Daniel's lawyer received her call. Within hours, arrangements were made for Elena to leave the mansion. She moved to a small hotel under temporary protection until the hearing. For the first time since everything started, she felt slightly safe. But fears still followed her. Because powerful people did not give up easily. Meanwhile, Daniel sat inside the prison meeting room, listening carefully as his lawyer explained the new evidence. The photos, the hidden accounts, the agreement signed by Victoria and Marcus. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. Not from relief, but from pain. The woman he loved had not only betrayed him. She had tried to destroy him completely. "Will this be enough?" he asked quietly. The lawyer nodded slowly. "If Elena testifies, yes. But Victoria's lawyers will attack her credibility. They will say she is lying for money or revenge." Daniel looked down at his hands. "Then she's risking everything for me." "Yes," the lawyer said. "She is." For the first time since his arrest, Daniel felt something stronger than despair. Hope. Across the city, Victoria was losing control. Marcus paced nervously inside her office. "This is getting dangerous," he said. "If she talks in court, we're finished." Victoria's expression remained cold, but anger burned in her eyes. "She's just a maid," she said sharply. "No one will believe her." But even as she spoke, doubt crept into her voice. Because deep down, she knew the truth. Plans failed when unexpected people became brave. The morning of the court hearing arrived. News reporters gathered outside the courthouse. Cameras flashed as Daniel was brought in under police escort. The public still believed he was guilty. Whispers followed him as he walked past. Victoria arrived shortly after, dressed in black, her face calm and confident. She played the role perfectly, the wounded wife seeking justice. But inside, tension tightened her chest. She kept searching the crowd, looking for Elena. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere felt heavy. The judge entered. Lawyers prepared their documents. The case that had destroyed a billionaire's life was finally about to be examined in full. Victoria's lawyer spoke first, repeating the accusations. Fraud, abuse, betrayal. He painted Daniel as a dangerous man who lost control of his power. Everything sounded convincing, until Daniel's lawyer stood up. "Your Honor," he said clearly, "the defense would like to call a new witness." Victoria's fingers tightened around her purse. She already knew the name before it was spoken. Elena Morales. The courtroom doors opened. Elena stepped inside slowly. She looked small compared to the powerful people around her. Simple clothes, nervous eyes, but her steps did not stop. For a moment, the entire room went silent. Victoria stared at her, anger flashing across her face. Marcus looked away. Daniel watched quietly, unable to hide his gratitude. Elena took her seat, her hands trembling slightly as she swore to tell the truth. This was the moment everything would change. Because for the first time since the beginning of the case, someone was finally ready to tell the story that Victoria had worked so hard to hide. And once the truth started speaking, it would be impossible to stop. The courtroom felt heavier the moment Elena sat down. Cameras clicked softly in the background. Reporters leaned forward. Even the judge watched more carefully now. Everyone understood that this quiet maid might change the entire case. Elena swallowed nervously. Her hands rested tightly together, but her voice, when she spoke, was clear. She began from the beginning. How she worked in the mansion. How she noticed late-night meetings between Victoria and Marcus. How documents appeared in Daniel's office when he was not home. She spoke slowly, carefully, choosing simple words. She did not exaggerate. She only told what she saw. At first, Victoria's lawyer smiled confidently. A Maid's story sounded weak compared to signed documents and financial records. But then Elena mentioned the recordings. The courtroom shifted. Daniel's lawyer played the audio. Victoria's voice filled the room again. Once he signs the transfer papers, we report him. A wave of whispers spread through the audience. The judge raised a hand for silence, but the damage had already begun. Victoria's calm expression cracked for the first time. The lawyer continued. Elena described the flash drive, the hidden folder, the financial documents she found under the desk. Photos were displayed on the courtroom screen. Signatures, account numbers, agreements between Victoria and Marcus. Every image chipped away at the perfect story Victoria had built. Marcus avoided eye contact completely. Victoria stared straight ahead, her jaw tight. Then came the cross-examination. Victoria's lawyer stood slowly, his voice sharp and controlled. Miss Elena, he said, isn't it true that Mr. Hayes helped you financially in the past? Elena nodded honestly. Yes. So you're grateful to him? Yes. The lawyer smiled slightly. And isn't it possible that your gratitude influenced your story today? The courtroom grew quiet again. Elena hesitated for a moment. Fear returned, pressing against her chest. This was the moment they tried to break her. But she remembered the night Marcus attacked her. The lies she had heard. The innocent man sitting behind her. She lifted her head. I'm not here because I am grateful, she said softly. I am here because what happened was wrong. Her voice did not shake anymore. I am poor. I have nothing to gain from this. I only want the truth. The simplicity of her words filled the room with silence stronger than any argument. Even the judge leaned forward slightly. Daniel watched from his seat, feeling something he had not felt in months. Respect mixed with disbelief. A person he barely knew was risking everything for justice. And for the first time, people in the courtroom began looking at him differently. Not as a criminal, but as a man who might have been betrayed. Then Daniel's lawyer revealed the final piece. Bank records showing money transferred from the fake accounts directly into companies secretly owned by Marcus. Dates matched perfectly with the accusations made against Daniel. The timeline exposed the entire plan. Create fake fraud. Accuse Daniel. Remove him from power. Take control of his assets. The courtroom erupted into whispers again. Victoria's face turned pale. Her lawyer requested a short break, but the judge refused. The truth was unfolding too clearly now. When questioning resumed, Victoria was called to the stand. For the first time since the trial began, she looked uncertain. Her answers became shorter. Her confidence faded. Small contradictions appeared in her statements. Daniel's lawyer pressed carefully. You said you feared your husband, he said calmly. Then why were financial transfers made from accounts you controlled after his arrest? Victoria hesitative. The pause lasted only seconds, but it was enough. The courtroom noticed. The judge noticed. And Victoria realized her perfect plan was collapsing in front of everyone. Outside the courthouse, news channels were already changing their headlines. New evidence raises doubts in Billionaire case. Public opinion began to shift. But inside the courtroom, the biggest moment had not yet arrived. Because Marcus had not spoken yet. And everyone knew he held the final truth. As the session ended for the day, Elena stepped outside, exhausted but relieved. She had done what she came to do. But across the hallway, Victoria watched her with cold, defeated anger. Not the anger of someone still fighting. The anger of someone who knew the end was coming. And desperate people often made their most dangerous decisions at the very end. Tomorrow would be the final hearing, and by the time it ended, someone's life would be completely destroyed. The final day of the trial arrived with heavy rain. Outside the courthouse, reporters gathered early, waiting for the verdict that had already captured the public's attention. What began as a scandal about a powerful billionaire had turned into something very different. A story about betrayal, greed, and an unexpected hero. Inside, the courtroom felt tense. Everyone knew this was the end. Daniel sat quietly beside his lawyer. He looked tired but calm. For the first time in months, fear no longer controlled his expression. Whatever happened next, the truth had finally been heard. Across the room, Victoria looked different. Her confidence was gone. The elegant posture she once carried had faded into stiffness. She avoided looking at Elena completely, because Elena's voice had changed everything. The judge called the session to order. Daniel's lawyer stood first, summarizing the evidence, the recordings, the hidden financial accounts, the signed agreement between Victoria and Marcus, the attempted intimidation of a witness. Each detail rebuilt the story piece by piece, not of a guilty man, but of a carefully planned betrayal. Then came the final moment. Marcus was called to the stand. He walked slowly, sweat visible on his forehead. His earlier confidence had disappeared. Under oath, he tried to repeat the same story, blaming misunderstandings and business confusion. But the evidence was too strong. The bank transfers carried his authorization. The documents carried his signature. The recordings connected him directly to the plan. Daniel's lawyer asked one simple question. Mr. Marcus, were you or were you not part of a plan to falsely accuse Daniel Hayes in order to gain control of his assets? Marcus hesitated. The silence stretched across the courtroom. Victoria's eyes locked onto him, filled with warning. But Marcus looked away, and in that moment, everyone understood. He was going to break. Yes, he said quietly. The word echoed through the room. Victoria's face turned pale. Marcus continued, his voice shaking. He explained everything. How Victoria convinced him Daniel would never agree to divorce without losing money. How they created fake financial records. How they staged arguments and false accusations to build a believable story. The courtroom erupted into shocked whispers. The truth was no longer hidden. It was spoken openly. Victoria suddenly stood up, her voice sharp with panic. He's lying, she shouted. He's trying to save himself. But her anger only made things worse. The calm, controlled image she had built disappeared completely. The judge ordered her to sit down, but the damage was already done. Her mask had fallen, and everyone could finally see who she really was. Hours later, the decision came. The judge's voice was steady and clear. All charges against Daniel Hayes were dismissed. The courtroom filled with quiet relief. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, breathing deeply as months of pressure finally lifted from his shoulders. Victoria and Marcus, however, faced immediate investigation for fraud, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. The plan that was meant to destroy one man had destroyed them instead. Outside the courthouse, rain continued to fall. Daniel stepped outside as reporters shouted questions, but he ignored them. His attention was on only one person. Elena stood near the steps, unsure if she should stay or leave. She never expected attention. She never wanted recognition. She only wanted the truth. Daniel walked toward her slowly. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Daniel said quietly, "You saved my life." Elena shook her head. "I only told what I saw." But Daniel understood the truth. Many people see injustice. Very few choose to stand against it. Weeks later, Daniel's reputation slowly recovered. His company welcomed him back, and the public story changed from scandal to survival. But the experience changed him deeply. He created a foundation to support workers and whistleblowers, people like Elena, who risked everything without power or wealth. Elena chose a simple life. She refused fame and interviews, returning to care for her mother. Yet her story spread quietly, inspiring others who felt small and unheard. Because sometimes the strongest voice in the room is not the richest or the loudest. It is the one that tells the truth when it is hardest to speak. And in the end, the billionaire did not win because of money or power. He won because one poor Maid refused to stay silent.